I mean, the two most famous instances, which are Kissing Doesn't Kill goes up in Chicago as part of Art Against AIDS on the Road, which is a national campaign.
It's an internal debate.
Yeah. Right, no, and I'm just saying, I'm thinking about that there are two debates that were prompted externally, one being the censorship of Kissing Doesn't Kill in Chicago, and the other is the censorship of the Venice piece in the Venice Biennale. And I would say that in both, in the Venice piece, come on, we were criticizing the Catholic Church in Italy. We knew that there was going to be a reaction, but I don't think anyone in the group had any idea that the piece was going to be arrested, impounded by customs, and the level of circus drama was going to unfold. It did. And I would also say the same with Kissing Doesn't Kill. I don't know, I came from Chicago. I could not have imagined that they were going to be tarred, literally blacked out in the way that they were.
And they had successfully been on display in other cities with rather minimal
reaction. Yeah, and I think the funny thing, like Avram and I have always gone back and forth around it. I think that some of the projects we did, like the New York Crimes, where we went out in the middle of the night, put a quarter in the box, took all the newspapers out, and slid our fake sleeve over the New York Times, so unsuspecting customers would buy the New York Times. We were so afraid of claiming that project publicly because of the litigiousness of the New York Times, and feared a lawsuit, that there was definitely debate within the group of claiming the project and all the rest of it, whereas my point was just some of our more famous controversial works, I don't know, I don't think we had a clue what was going to happen with that.
I think we had fantasies about the controversies that some of them would cause, but we were frequently wrong, and there were other controversies that we hadn't imagined that rose out of them. And I think one internal debate that I recall was actually the M4 installation of the Kissing Doesn't Kill. They requested that we remove the tagline which said, corporate greed, public indifference, and government inaction against political crisis, and they asked us to remove corporate greed because they were seeking corporate funding from pharmaceutical companies. And I was at the meeting where that request was made, and in my head I lunged across the table. I don't know if I actually did that, but we did have a debate about that and decided we would put the project up as it was anyway, but sort of struck a deal for them to pay for one posters. And then when it came to an opportunity in New York, Creative Time actually sort of bravely, they're very fearless, they bravely said, just, do it that way. So that was a huge controversy. We did have controversies, but I don't think we ever sort of sat down and calculated, crafted a message for a particular effect. We just said what we feel really compelled to say.
Well, I mean, when we went to Italy.
No, yeah, I would say the church.
We were like, because it was in the middle of like Stop the Church and all the insidious and horrible things that were going on here in New York around the Catholic Church, and we were sort of like, we're going to Italy, over the Catholic Church, what are we going to do? I mean, it wasn't calculated, but it was a visceral sort of reaction. We knew something would happen.
But I think also the Kissing Doesn't Kill, one of the things that gets lost in the scrapheap of history is that it was sex positive, it was a tart commentary on advertising of the day, but it was also about saliva transmissibility, which at the time in the AIDS community was hugely controversial as to how you actually could contract AIDS, even within the medical community. So the poster, the bus site was very much about that as well.
We were, I would say that we were also a little naive. I mean, living in the bubble of New York City, we were shocked to find out that people had issues with quote-unquote black man kissing the white woman.
That's what shut it down in Chicago,
yeah.
For those of you who didn't know that. There was a group of people in Chicago who felt like the Kissing Doesn't Kill poster was not about finding a cure for AIDS, but was in fact promoting a particular lifestyle, and that an underlying message of this particular lifestyle was that black men gave white women AIDS.
It's also, I think, just a funny footnote of that time is that then shortly before the time it appeared in Chicago, the then mayor of Chicago, Mayor Harold Washington, had had a medical crisis and was taken in by the emergency room, and there was a sort of urban legend that when his clothing was cut away, he was wearing women's undergarments. And so a painting, I was a graduate student at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, and a painter at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago exhibited a painting of Harold Washington, who was a black man, in his undergarments. And this painting was arrested, I'm not kidding, arrested off the wall and impounded by the city of Chicago and held for like a long period of time, 6 months. So this was the city. That was by an artist named Dred Scott.
Dred Scott, right.
Who was, what is
He
his
did
name
something
at
with
that
the
time?
flag.
He
He desecrated the
He
flag.
desecrated flag.
He was a controversial artist.
He situated the flag in such a way that you couldn't look at his exhibition without standing on the flag, and it became a huge thing. I think, though, that we were very conscious all the way along that public dialogue, public art, or art in public spaces is really a dialogue. It's not really, it only works if you pay attention to the responses. So I think we did spend a lot of time thinking about it. In fact, Tom used to go around with a camera and photograph the graffiti on the posters, so we can sort of gauge what was happening, and there were a lot of surprises.
So